everyone. Welcome to Weekender at 5, where we bring you the biggest news headlines from New Zealand and India. My name is Preeti Garude, and I'll be your host for this evening. Let's look at some of the main headlines of the day. There are 185 new community cases in New Zealand. 152 of those are in Auckland, 25 are in the Waikato, and 8 are in Northland. An additional death in Auckland has been added to the national cohort figures. However, the Ministry of Health has said the person's death is subject to a police investigation, and the ministry will not be commenting further. Officials say that 90% of eligible Kiwis have received at least one dose of the vaccine, and 80% of eligible Kiwis have been fully vaccinated. Pre-pandemic rates of immigration are unsustainable if governments are unable to build infrastructure support needed to settle people in the community, says the Productivity Commission. In its preliminary findings and recommendations released this week, the Productivity Commission highlights the lack of a long-term immigration strategy for failure in planning infrastructure and housing to support an aging as well as an increasing population. In April this year, the government had asked the New Zealand Productivity Commission to advise on immigration policies that are fit for New Zealand's future. The Commission took a long-term view of 10 to 30 years to think about what New Zealand's immigration system should try to achieve and how it can do that. It looked at what skills may be needed in the future, how to inculcate Te Amari principles to the immigration system, along with a wider view of other well-being factors such as housing and infrastructure development. The findings of the current report, the draft report, revealed that the high number of permanent residents and temporary migrants have contributed to New Zealand's rapid population growth over the past decade. This population growth has added pressure on public infrastructure such as roads, hospitals, schools. The immigration policy's disconnect from other policy areas such as housing has meant that migration and population numbers have grown ahead of the stock and flow of public infrastructure, contributing to burdens for the wider community, states the report. You can read the story on the full report in this week's newspaper. Moving to sports, New Zealand will face either Pakistan or Australia in T20 World Cup final, which is scheduled to get underway at 3 a.m. on Monday morning after defeating England in a thriller match yesterday. 2 years ago, England had secured victory by the barest of margin, lifting the trophy despite the tournament's decider super over ending as a tie. Now, as New Zealand head into the final, all eyes are on the Black Caps, hoping that they will finally lift the trophy this year. Moving to entertainment. Go beyond Bollywood with Indian movies at the New Zealand International Film Festival this year, which is airing in 12 cities across New Zealand, featuring 7 Indian films of contemporary filmmakers. The 3 Indian movies that you can still watch in the theatres in Wellington and Christchurch are Godavari, directed by Nikhil Mahajan. In this movie, every month, Nishikant walks through his town of Nashik, collecting rent for his family of landowners. Each repetition of the cycle only intensifies his bitterness and anger towards his tenants, his parents, his daughter, and the river that runs through the center of Nashik, the Godavari. Just as his anger threatens to boil over, his family is confronted with a series of tragedies and revelations that shift their lives and their world into clear focus. You can watch this movie in Wellington on November 18th and November 21st. A Night of Knowing Nothing, directed by Payal Kapadia. One of the year's most electrifying debuts and a winner of the Best Documentary Award at Cannes, Payal Kapadia's hybrid feature, A Night of Knowing Nothing, is a fever dream of impossible love tied to a broader reflection on contemporary India. Structured around letters from an unseen protagonist, L, directed to her estranged lover, K, Kapadia's film is at once grand and contained, weaving fragments of a romance and moments of domestic life with handheld documentary footage captured around the country over several years. You can watch this movie in Wellington on November 13th and November 16th. Writing with Fire 2021, directed by Ritu Thomas and Shumit Ghosh. The story of a fearless journalist devoted to exposing injustice is well-tread cinematic ground, yet it feels as fresh and riveting as ever in Writing with Fire, the debut feature from co-directors Shumit Ghosh and Ritu Thomas. The award-winning documentary tells the story of women behind India's only all-female news network, Khabar Lahariya, or Waves of News. The film follows unflinching chief reporter Meera Devi and her team as, having kept the newspaper going for 14 years, they begin a transition from print to digital in a determined effort to move with the times. You can watch this movie in Christchurch on November 19th and in Dunedin on November 17th. That's all the time that we have today. Thank you for joining us and keep tuning in to Indian Week in Depth.